Hey, what's going on, guys? The RE100 line. What is it? Why is it? And is it dead? We discuss this and more today on the Gundam Report. So most of you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with the RE100 line. Basically, it was a way for Bandai to make some of the less well-known, less popular designs maybe in 1/100 scale and make them look like master grades on the outside without having all the bells and whistles of a master grade, as in they usually don't have a full inner frame and they don't have any sort of cockpit or like seated pilot figure inside a cockpit or anything like that. Some of the other features like moving armor gimmicks and things like that that master grades, modern master grades typically have, are not a part of the RE100 line. A lot of people have described them as like 1/100 scale HG kits essentially, and they do have some things in common with HG, but I think the big difference is the outward appearance, because like I said, the RE100 line is meant to look like master grades on the outside, as in they are like more highly detailed than typically what you would see on an HG kit. So I think that's one of the main and important differences. But as many of you may have noticed, that the RE100 line at the moment of recording this video seems to be sort of dead, because we haven't had one for quite a while and we don't have any news for the foreseeable future to have any more coming out. That said, I have a bit of a theory on that, in that the RE100 line and the Full Mechanics line are basically two sides of the same coin. The RE100 line, so far as we know them, has only been for Universal Century designs, and the Full Mechanics line has been for anything non-Universal Century or alternate universe designs. So although we haven't had any RE100 kits recently, we have had Full Mechanics kits, so it's just a matter of which one's going to be next, if it's going to be an AU design or a UC design. And so if the next release to be coming out is going to be something from UC, we will see the RE100 line come back. If it's going to be something else, once again from an alternative universe, it'll just continue to be Full Mechanics releases. So that's what I think is going on with that line, and that they're basically kind of like in Bandai's production side. In their point of view, it's the same line, it just kind of depends on what the Mobile Suit universe is from. Anyway, so now that we have a basic idea of kind of what the RE100 line is, what I want to talk about in today's video is what would be some good candidates for the RE100 line going into the future. And as always, guys, if you have any other further ideas aside from the ones that I'm going to talk about today, do feel free to let me know down in the comments below, because I'm sure there's plenty that I just didn't think of. I did also reach out to everybody in my Discord server for some other ideas, and so they did also help contribute to that. If you guys do want to be a part of my Discord, you can check out my Patreon, is in the link down in the video description down below. If you join there, you can join the Discord. So before we get into talking about some of the candidates, I want to lay out kind of some of the ground rules, kind of these are some of the criteria that I was thinking of when thinking of what would be a good candidate for the RE100 line. So obviously, as I mentioned before, it would have to be something from Universal Century, of course. The next point of criteria is the mobile suit's popularity. So I mean, if it's something that's really popular, then obviously it's probably more of a candidate for the master grade line. If it's something that's super obscure, it's probably just going to be too obscure to be made as a model kit. Although we have seen some pretty obscure designs in the RE100 line, like the gun cannon detector, for example, is something that I think probably a lot of people were not familiar with. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a design that was featured, you know, even prominently or shortly in an anime, but if it's something that's like from some side story manga that appeared for like a page and it has like one or two pieces of official artwork, it's probably not going to be, you know, popular or well known enough to even qualify for even any kind of release probably at that point. But who knows? Anyway, the next point of criteria is, does it have an HG or any other kits? So we've seen this with some of the RE100 releases. Some of them do have other releases. For example, the Zaku2FZ does have a HGUC kit. The Gyaradoga, of course, has HG kits. And then a couple of them, like the Vignagina and the Gun Easy, did also have previous releases too, not a part of like the HGUC line. But what I don't think would make sense as a candidate for the RE100 line is something that already has a master grade kit. So it already has a 1/100 scale version in master grade. So maybe something older like the Gym Custom, for example, I think is one that if we were to get a new kit in 1/100 scale of the Gym Custom, it would be some sort of 2.0 based on the 2.0 frame or something of that as a master grade. Once again, it wouldn't be sort of demoted, as it were, to being an RE100 kit. And that leads directly into my next point of criteria. Is it something that would be better off as a master grade? And I have a couple of examples that I thought of. For example, like the Dom Troppen, I feel like is popular well enough of a design that would certainly warrant a master grade. I think probably more likely than a RE100 kit. Another couple of examples I think would be like a Gym 3, the Blue Destiny, the Pale Rider, the High Gog, the Garazulu. I think these are designs that if we were to see new 100 scale versions of these to come out, probably it would be a master grade more likely than a RE100 kit, just based on their kind of popularity. And in the case of many of these releases, I think a master grade could be based off of existing variants that they could use parts from. And that leads exactly into my last point of criteria here is, can it be made into P Bandai variants? So as we well know, Bandai likes to make premium Bandai versions of kits. And so if they're going to be making a new RE100 kit, is it open to the possibility of making some sort of variant of it to be as a premium Bandai? For example, with the Bawu, we got the Re-Bawu as a premium Bandai exclusive. With the Gun Cannon Detector, we got the alternate color version, which I can't remember the name of at the moment, but we got a different color version as a P Bandai exclusive. With the Gun Easy, we got a few different P Bandai exclusives of that. So this is what I mean is if Bandai can also make extra bonus money off making a kind of pretty simple, straightforward premium exclusive variant of it. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and get into some examples. One thing I'll just say as the last point is I am not going to include anything Advanced Zeta, just because if there was anything coming out from the Advanced Zeta series as an RE100 kit, it would guaranteed be premium Bandai. So just kind of not really even worth kind of talking about that. I would love it, but let's just talk about what could be a good candidate for a standard release. The first example that I'm going to give obviously is going to be the Kshatriya. This is something that people have wanted in 100 scale for a long time. Even in RE100, I think it would still have the same issues that it would have as if it were a master grade, except the problem is with a master grade, you not only have the stability issues of the binders, but you also have a very expensive kit just because of all the inner frame and everything. With RE100, you would still have the issue of just how heavy the binders are on it, but at least the kit wouldn't be quite so expensive. So if they can find a way to get around, making the binders at least somewhat stable and not completely, weighing down the shoulders of the kit and making it constantly look like this. If they can find a way to get around that, then I think this, as an RE100 kit, it would make a lot more sense just based on trying to keep it as a somewhat lower price point compared to as if it were a master grade. It's not like Bandai hasn't made expensive master grades. We have like the Deep Striker for a couple of examples of very expensive master grade kits, so that's not unheard of. But I think for the case of the Kshatriya, if it were to come out as either an RE or a master grade, I think it probably would make more sense to come out as an RE. Next up from that same series is the Rosenzulu. Hey, I would love a master grade Rosenzulu. I think it's probably more likely just based on it being a fairly large mobile suit and just the fact that although it was featured pretty prominently in the Unicorn series, it was kind of like a secondary character sort of, right, to Full Frontal. So it does kind of make sense that maybe this would be a good candidate for an RE100 kit, and I think it would be very great. Obviously, it would be very similar in a lot of ways to the Hamahama, of course, which was a RE100 release, which was quite nice. And so if they were to make it, something along the lines of that for the Rosenzulu, I think it would be really cool. Next up, a couple of things from the Sentinel series. Number one is a Nero. This is another one where I would absolutely love it if we got a master grade, but I think just because it's a fairly obscure design, being from Sentinel, which doesn't have an animation, a lot of people are familiar with like the S Gundam, the XS Gundam, even the Phase. We've seen some master grades from that series for sure. But the Nero being sort of like the Jim Grunt sort of the series, I think would probably make a good candidate, sort of like we had with the Gun Easy, although this wouldn't be quite so small. It would be pretty large, like everything else from Sentinel. It's a pretty good size, but it would certainly make sense. And there's like the Nero Trainer, and I think probably one or two other variants that they could make as premium Bandai releases. Now, just to kind of go back to the Kshatriya and the Rosenzulu, in those cases, yeah, there's not really too much that they could make as far as premium Bandai variants. And if you're thinking Garazulu, the Garazulu, as I mentioned before, I think is more likely a candidate for being a proper master grade than an RE100. Anyway, moving on to also the ZakuAurelius from Sentinel as well. The ZakuAurelius, another really cool release. It does have an HG kit, which I think, even after all these years, is a relatively popular kit still, even though I built it many years ago. Not really the best. It is an older HG kit, but it is still a really popular design, and I know that one I think would be very well received from the fan base, and one that obviously has variants. There are variants of the ZakuAurelius. I don't think they would go all the way to, and they couldn't really, just because it would be a totally new kit to make something like the Zeku Zwei. I think it's like the huge, massive one. I don't think they would go that far, but there is certainly variants that they could make of these ZakuAurelius. I tried to kind of group those, but the rest of these are just kind of like scattered throughout different series, so they're not really particular. I'm going to be bouncing around anyway. The Siskade is another one. This is one that I was very surprised that we saw an SD release of this, an SD cross silhouette line, which was really cool. It is an SD design originally, so that does make sense, but I think seeing a like full scale version of that in 100 scale, honestly in HD would be really cool as well. But RE100 I think would be really cool here of the Syscade. There's two different color variants of it, so there's our premium Bandai releases right there. So I think this one would be really awesome. Also one that's like a fairly obscure, but just because of the fact that it did have a SD release, I think probably a lot more people are familiar with it now. And it's really cool as it's just like one of the few mono-eye Gundam designs, which I think is pretty unique. And of course, obviously that huge massive weapon is, how cool is that? All right, and then the first of our like Zeta and Double Zeta series mentions that we're going to be talking about here, there's going to be quite a lot of them, as I think there's a lot of really great candidates amongst the Zeta and Double Zeta series for releases in the line, as we have a lot of them in HG form. And more coming out hopefully in the future, but the Gamalk is one that we don't have any other model kit form. There is a cause signature figure of the Gamalk, but it's such a cool design, really cool, and I think one that would make a really good candidate for RE100 now. They probably couldn't make any sort of premium Bandai variant of this again, unfortunately, but sort of similar to the Kashachu, I think it's just a larger mobile suit that I think would have a lot of excitement around it just because of the fact that it's big and just a really cool, very unique design. And on the note of unique designs, also we have the Jamru Fin. This is one that does have an old 80s kit, but this one also is probably pretty fairly unknown, but I feel like it's kind of in that same kind of realm of sort of like the gun cannon detector, is that it's pretty well known, but there is certainly people who are familiar with it, and it's certainly one that I think just the uniqueness and the interest, like how interesting and unique of a design it is, I think would make it appealing to a lot of people. I'm just gonna kind of rattle off a couple of these other ones here because they're all kind of like everything that I just said about those couple of releases. You can kind of say the same thing about a number of these here, like the Palace Athene. I think because this has a pretty popular, fairly popular HGUC release as well, obviously that kind of I think would make a lot of sense. The Barzam as well, this one has a fairly recent HGUC release, which was very well received. I think there's certainly a lot of fans of the Barzam out there that would make for a nice RE100 kit, just because, again, very similar to like the Gun Easy. Fairly simple and straightforward kind of grunt design, essentially. Another one might be like the Gabflay, another really cool HG kit, sort of very similar to the Bawu in that they could work a fairly simple transformation into that as well. It's nothing like as complicated as like the Zeta Gundam's transformation, but the Bawu they were able to make as a transforming mobile suit in the RE100 line, so I think they could certainly do that with the Gabflay as well. And a few more here would be like the Biolarnt. We've seen the Biolarnt in HGUC and many variations of that to come out as premium Bandai. Actually, the original traditional Biolarnt design was actually the last to come out after like 4 or 5 other different variations, so plenty of fodder there. The Methis and the Masala as well, both of these I think also have pretty nice HG kits that I think would certainly be popular enough to make as a RE100 release, though probably not popular enough, and just based on their size and design, maybe wouldn't necessarily make sense to make them as full-on master grades, but as RE100 kits, I think they could certainly be quite popular. Now, another one I think might be kind of nice, because we've had stuff like the Vignagina and the Gun Easy for other examples. The Denanzan, I think, would be another one that would make a lot of sense to have a nice new kit of that. It does have model kits in like the old series, but again, to see such a different and unique design to come out, and again, I think it probably wouldn't be popular enough to make it as a master grade, but as a RE100 kit, I think it would be a nice candidate. Some other grunt type suits that I think would be really nice would be the Kapul. Obviously, we have the Turn A Kapul and the Double Zeta version of the Kapul, Zeta or Double Zeta. Anyway, there's the blue version and the green version, so obviously they can make a variant based off that. I love the Kapul. I would love a new HGUC kit of that, considering we already have the Momo Kapul that included runners for a new Kapul, but we still haven't got that out. So if not in HGUC, it would be really cool to see that in 100 scale as well. Also, we have the Zaku 3. Zaku 3, one of the first to come out in the HGUC line. There's 2 different variants already in the HGUC line, and that's like long before they were doing premium Bandai, so they were both actually standard releases in the HGUC line. That's another one that I think is a fairly large mobile suit, and again, being maybe not popular enough for a full release of that, they could make it as RE, and then they have the variant as well. Very easy to do right there. Actually, they have another variant because they had another variant out from the Twilight Axis series as well. The Gallus J is another one that I think a lot of people would be excited for. Just kind of really cool design, but maybe it wouldn't make sense for a full-on master grade. The Sumo as well from Turn A. I think there's a lot of really cool mobile suits in Turn A that I would love to see new kits for. Most of them probably not going to see any new kits for anytime soon, although the Sumo I think is pretty popular. Obviously you have the gold version and the silver version, so you have your premium Bandai variants right there. It would really, I think, make a lot of sense to make this as a really nice side piece. This is the kind of thing I haven't really mentioned too much about so far. Bandai was doing this for a while, which I thought was really nice, how they would be putting out a RE100 kit like alongside a master grade kit that would kind of go together. So when the Alex 2.0 came out, they made the RE100 Zaku 2FZ as like kind of like a set. And so speaking on the Sumo, obviously the Sumo would go really well. Like an RE100 Sumo would go nicely with the master grade Turn A or Turn X, for example. So even though those aren't new releases, but I mean, just they have kind of counterparts that they could go nicely together with. I want to end with like a couple more different Gundam designs, but just the last thing before that would be the Silver Bullet and or Dovenwolf. Obviously, if they make one, they can make the other. Some of you guys are probably going to say, well, they already made a Master Grade Mark V. Couldn't they just make a Master Grade Silver Bullet or a Master Grade Dovenwolf based off of the Master Grade Mark V? Possibly, but after building that kit, and if you really look at the designs side by side, how much of the Master Grade Mark V could they actually reuse in order to make a Silver Bullet or a Dovenwolf? It's very little of it, because if you think like, oh, they just need to make new armor parts because they could just reuse the frame, you have to remember the armor parts, the frame is made to accommodate the armor parts. If they change the armor parts, then the accommodation is not going to fit. The armor parts are not going to fit on the existing frame, so they would have to change quite a bit of the frame, I think, to accommodate the different armor pieces. So even though, like in canon, the Silver Bullet, the Dovenwolf, and the Mark V are kind of like, they make sense in canon, them being based off of each other. But in model kit form, I don't think that the Silver Bullet or Dovenwolf would work based off of the Master Grade Mark V, so I think it would be fine to just make them as a RE100 release. And then obviously there's variants, there's different versions of either of those kits or each other. They could make a Silver Bullet and then make a Dovenwolf based off of that, or they could make a Silver Bullet and make a Silver Bullet, maybe not a suppressor, but another version. There's different versions, like the fin funnel test type, for example, based off of the regular Silver Bullet. Okay, a couple of Gundams here. The Gundam GP00 Blossom. Obviously, we got the GP04 Gerbera in the RE100 line. Would kind of make sense to go back to the other end of the GP series and make the GP00. I think would be a really cool release. I would love to see that. It's a really cool design. It would be great to see as a master grade, but I think would make a lot of sense, like with the Gerbera, to have it as an RE100 release. The Kasi Gundam, obviously one that we had in HG form, a few years back. It's a really large Gundam design, so probably wouldn't make sense to be as a master grade. It would just be too big, too expensive, maybe. So just making it as an RE100 release, I think would be a nice stand-in for having a cool 1/100 scale model kit version of the Kasi. And lastly, the Moon Gundam. This is one that I'm actually not really too sure about this. This was brought up in the Discord, and people did kind of seem to be in agreement that it would make a good candidate. I'm not too sure. I think like for how successful the HG kit is, it would be perfectly successful enough to make as a full-on master grade, but at the same time, it's I mean, the kit was popular, but the mobile suit design is still like relatively obscure. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I'll leave it up to you to end the video. Like I said, let me know your guys' thoughts. If you have any other ideas that would make good candidates for the RE100 line, leave them in the comment section below. And let me know, do you think the Moon Gundam would make a good candidate? Yes or no? That's going to be it for today's video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed taking a look at some of these. And hopefully the RE100 line is not dead. I enjoyed the series a lot. I know it does have kind of mixed, there are a lot of mixed opinions about it out there in the community, but I think it's a really cool line just because of the fact that we were able to get nice 1/100 scale versions of some little bit more obscure mobile suits from the Universal Century, or if we're talking about full mechanics, from Alternate Universe as well. If you guys would like to see a video like this about alternate universe releases that we may see in the future for the full mechanics line, let me know in the comments as well, and I'll work on that for you guys. This was fun putting this list together and talking about it a little bit with you guys. I'll be doing more videos like this in the future, so if you enjoyed it, make sure that you're subscribed, like the video if you would like to as well, and if you guys want to check out some kits for yourself, you can check the link in the video description as always to USA Gundam Store. Got all sorts of Gundam model kits there for you guys to check out, and hopefully we'll be seeing some of these out in the future as well. You guys can check the link in the video description. Thank you all so much for all of your support. Till next time, have a good day, guys. Bye.